And so now more than ever, it's important to factor in these kinds of risks in our expat retire early life plans, to understand these risks do exist and they seem to be happening over and over, and they're all related to the monumental changes we've seen since 2020. Even though the headlines may be slightly different, they still all come under the same umbrella of what has been transpiring since 2020. So that puts us in a position where when we make our plans, we need to consider and factor in, and we need to think differently than we did before 2020. Hello, welcome to our channel where we discuss the retire early life, whether it's at home or abroad. Travel hell, forced to quit. First, I want to tell you this. We've been doing a lot of traveling. We've been abroad for 10 years. I spent most of it in Ecuador. And so we have traveled on airplanes, been traveling on airplanes for 10 years. And we've been doing it internationally. We've been to Mexico, Ecuador, Central America, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, and even within countries, like within Ecuador, we did a lot of travel. And for example, even though we did travel by bus a lot of the times, we did also fly from, say, Cuenca to Quito quite often, as is the case that it's a pretty small geographical area. Even getting on a plane in a smaller country can be much easier to do, and it's more economical than, say, flying from Baja, California, all the way to the Yucatan. Mexico is a much larger country, and so that would still set you back a good amount for airfare. But in a smaller country, and it's not just Ecuador. A lot of the countries are smaller when you get abroad, especially in South America, Central America, especially the area of Ecuador and Peru, Colombia, these kinds of areas. They're connected and pretty close together. So we did quite a bit of flying back and forth from Cuenca to Quito. We did a lot of travel on the coast. We spent a whole month just on the coast when we went to Ecuador, just traveling the coast. We wrote a book about it. And even within Europe, we did quite a bit of travel within Europe. Even Europe's even more economical. They've got these economic airlines there. Where we took a flight from Italy to Malta for like 25 euros. So very permissible, economical, and when you're an experienced travel, even when they don't let you carry the bags, too many bags, it's fine. You can handle it. But how quickly does travel heaven turn into a travel hell? Well, as quickly as you can snap your fingers. I've said in other videos, and I've mentioned that since 2020, we've had multiple international flights canceled. And this is not the typical cancellation like in the USA. I've heard of situations in the USA where a person's flight gets canceled and they immediately hand you a check. Not so when you go abroad. I mean, we went round and round. I've made videos about getting ripped off by Alitalia Airlines, which then eventually simply claimed bankruptcy and wiped off all their debts. And it wasn't just Alitalia, it was other airlines throughout Europe, and they just opportunistically used what was going on to not give people refunds, and it's just turned into a travel hell, and is why we decided that the way things are so abnormal ever since 2020 that it's too risky and there's people out there that just totally ignore the risk still do it. And it gets easier to do, or I should say less painful to take that kind of a risk if you're just yourself, one person, and you understand the risk completely and you're willing to accept the consequences of the risk. But when you're flying with family and the amount and the cost of all the tickets added together adds up to a small fortune, and then when it happens more than once, and it just becomes unbearable.
Shelley McClaskey worries she may be out nearly $900 for flights she and her family didn't take last Christmas.
We thought that things might open up by the end of the year. And it wasn't until Thanksgiving that we really thought, California at that time in Los Angeles area was shut down even more. So we just didn't think it was a good idea.
They canceled their Southwest Airlines tickets and were given a flight credit. Since they booked the trip last June, that credit expires next month before they'll be able to use it. Flyer complaints over refunds skyrocketed last year from less than 1,600 in 2019 to more than 89,500 in 2020.
One of the things that we really enjoy about being abroad is the ability to travel, and we have enjoyed it for so long. And we just absolutely hate what has happened since 2020 and what is happening, and it's still happening. As you can see, there's always some reason why plans don't go the way that we had hoped, and in a big way. And so now more than ever, it's important to factor in these kinds of risks in our expat retire early life plans, to understand these risks do exist and they seem to be happening over and over, and that they're all related to the monumental changes we've seen since 2020. Even though the headlines may be slightly different, they still all come under the same umbrella of what has been transpiring since 2020. So that puts us in a position where when we make our plans, we need to consider and factor in, and we need to think differently than we did before 2020 about our travel plans. I refer to them generally as travel disruptions, and that's exactly what I mean, exactly what I just described.
The Omicron surge continues to take a toll on those scrambling to get home after the holidays. Some travelers heading overseas have to show a negative COVID test upon landing. So what they're doing is they're getting tested at the airport before they take off, which is leading to chaos. Here's the lineup here at LaGuardia Airport. At one point, it snaked all the way out to the sidewalk, and the temperatures here hovering around 18 degrees.
There are no guarantees. In the past, it was a given. You buy a ticket, you get on a plane. I mean, yeah, there are always situations where an airline might try to bump you. I've had an airline try to bump me, and I told them no way, and they didn't do it. But that's because I had an appointment. If I had an open schedule, I would have just said, sure, just give me a free hotel. Give me a free hotel, and you can bump me. And, of course, another ticket. So, the flexibility is what it comes down to, is how much flexibility you have. But the way things are abroad, though, is a lot riskier than the way things are normally done in North America. And even though in North America, people are generally still on some kind of a schedule, and therefore they are put out by these disruptions, and they're put out by having their plans canceled. It's understood that when we go abroad, we should have already a more flexible schedule, but even so, as I've mentioned already, it goes beyond that when you go abroad. It becomes a financial risk, and it's not, the word risk isn't meant as maybe it'll happen. It's when it happens. It's just like these storms, when all these storms happen all at once in one area, and then the insurance companies, there's all this damage to all this property, and of course, The insurance companies aren't really, they're for-profit companies, you know, they're not going to, their idea is to take in way more money than they have to pay out. And so if something happens where they have to pay out a lot, they just can't do it or they're going to go bankrupt. So they just get their high-powered lawyers and they don't pay. And it's the same way with these credit cards. When you have these massive disruptions during this kind of global disruptions, and a lot of people like start using their credit cards, it starts becoming something that they, all of a sudden, you know, well, I don't think we want to keep doing this. They don't want to do it. Relying on what has happened and the way things have happened or played out or we've been able to respond in the past may or may not work in the future, or I say during this time in this environment. I just wanted to make a video and warn you all, because a lot of times we just kind of mention these things in passing, and I think it's important enough to make a whole video just about this subject. So I appreciate you coming to the video. I hope you got something out of that. As always, have a wonderful day.